Welcome to CHAINCHAT, a podcast driven by our desire to unlock the dialogue surrounding the ever-growing and incredibly exciting digital world.
We are your hosts, Mihi and Nicola, two women from the legal world who are passionate about making this space relevant, relatable and accessible to everyone. Let's chat.
Hi guys, today's episode is inspired by an article that we read last week and shared to our Oryx Gold LinkedIn page, and it's about whether the metaverse is safe for women. So I think now is the time that we should add a bit of a trigger warning to this episode. We will very briefly be talking about themes of sexual assault. And I'll repeat here what I said on my LinkedIn page last week when I shared this, and that is that I have a vested interest in the safety of women. And if we are unable to safely walk down a street at night, how the hell do we keep ourselves safe in the metaverse?
So there is definitely an opportunity to exploit the metaverse in this reality, where your connection to your avatar isn't physical. So what you do in the metaverse won't affect you in real life. But what I see a problem with is how people think this behaviour is acceptable in general. So in the article Mihi shared on the Oryx Gold page, and we both shared to our personal accounts, Nina Patel, a psychotherapist and researcher's avatar in the metaverse, was subject to some pretty horrendous behaviour. I would encourage you to read the article. The link is in our podcast description. But I kind of feel like this is a bit of a cop-out, in that this behaviour isn't okay, whether it's digital or not. And this is definitely the time to be more aware. We are still so early on in the metaverse and in this Web3 space that now is the time for us to start setting out what we will and won't accept. What's socially acceptable and what's not. Like Mihi said a couple episodes ago about sliding in the DMs, it's not socially acceptable.
And we talk a lot about the opportunities in this space and how exciting and innovative it is. But the prospect of being sexually assaulted in the metaverse is incredibly distressing. And in this article, we have a very clear account that actually confirms that it's already happening. So how can we crack down on harmful criminal behavior in the metaverse? Is it even possible? It is easy to stay anonymous in the metaverse, and the technology has purposely been designed that way. The decentralized nature of it means that it's not supposed to be regulated, but we need regulation in respect of these issues. And I think the difficulty that we have had, when I say we, I mean my partner and I here at home, just in reporting his stolen NFTs, which is also really distressing, but not the same. I think about how hard that's been, and even if at some stage down the line there is a clear regulated process for crimes such as sexual assault in the metaverse, it will also mean making sure that regulators in the relevant jurisdiction, like the police force for your country, as well as all of the others involved in the process, actually understand how this space works. We've said it before, it is like a new language, and thinking about all of the different parts that would need to come together in order to work to actually give victims a just outcome, like a truly just outcome, is very overwhelming.
So we know socially, in real life, there is a lot of work to still be done around these issues. And it does sometimes feel like a massive black hole that we just can't seem to turn the light on within. We're constantly faced with backlash or ridicule when we try and talk about this stuff. But it's a real thing. It's happening to your mum, it's happening to your sister, your auntie, your friends, that lady you sit next to at work, the girl you sit next to on the bus home. These are the women this behaviour is happening to. And this is why I think it's so integral that we touch on it so early in our podcast life cycle, because we need to ensure that our audience knows that while we are fighting for a space for women, and especially, let me say that again, especially for women of colour and Indigenous women, in this world, in the metaverse, in Web3 and cryptocurrency, we are also 100% aware and acknowledge why there could be a reluctance to enter, what barriers there are, what horrendous behaviour you're subjected to when you do, and how frustrating and frightening this can be.
And we're grateful to have come across this article because it is a serious issue and it's not the first time that we've landed on this discussion about safety in the metaverse. I think it also raises a greater question. Rather than thinking just about women's safety in the metaverse, what about women's safety in the digital world as a whole? Or at risk of overwhelming all of us even further, what about women's safety in general? If we are looking just specifically at digital safety, we have the Harmful Digital Communications Act here in New Zealand. That was enacted in 2015, and I have actually reported a crime against myself under this act a few years ago, which was pretty distressing, and it was a distressing process. And basically, just to give you some context, someone used my images from my personal social media page on a pornography website. Someone that I didn't know, lived in a different city, and the images weren't pornographic in and of themselves. Not that it matters, but they weren't. But they did show my face. And while I appreciated the help that I received from the New Zealand police, soon after there were a number of homicides and my issue was no longer a priority. And that was pretty much the end of it. That was the last that I heard. So resourcing is an issue, and the level to which we prioritise women's safety online and in a wider sense is something we really need to be thinking about.
And I think we can start that thinking by understanding that we are still at the beginning of building this digital world. Yes, it exists, but in terms of the metaverse and Web3, it's still developing, and there is an opportunity for us to build something we want. And I think that's why Mihi and I are putting ourselves into this space to kind of help start that conversation, to help forge a way in this space with what we want, with what we need in this digital space, and what we're not willing to tolerate.
So, what do you think? I know it is a pretty heavy episode. Obviously, we haven't really brought any answers with us. I wish we had them. I wish we had the solutions and knew that we could get things moving and working to make a better, safer world for everyone, but specifically women. But we can't. We have just raised the issues. We're floating some thoughts. We want to know what your thoughts are as well.
And just to let you know, this, what we're talking about happens to Mihi and I. We're both subjected to it constantly, not just in the digital world, but also in real life as well. So we want to know what you think. Connect with us on Instagram, YouTube, or the Oryx Gold LinkedIn page. All of those links are in our description. And otherwise, please take care, and we'll chat to you next week.